Hi everyone, can you hear me okay? Yes, so thank you for having me. This is my first Ignite and it's been fantastic so far, really good speakers. I'm a psychiatrist, so I work in a crisis team in Whitchurch Hospital, and I'm a clinical lecturer, so I teach medical students about psychiatry, and I do some research into post-traumatic stress disorder. And it's a really exciting time to be a researcher in psychiatry because there's been a renaissance of interest into psychedelic substances. People are doing some fantastic work on drugs that have been demonized over the past couple of decades, like LSD, ketamine, psilocybin, or magic mushrooms, and something that you may have heard of called Mdma as well. So I'm part of a very small research team in Cardiff with my colleagues, Prof. John Bisson, Prof. Richard Wise, Dr. Ben Sesser, and Chrissy Wilson. And we're about to start the first brain imaging study of the effects of Mdma into people suffering from chronic treatment-resistant PTSD. So that's what my talk is going to be about. I want to explain a bit about what PTSD is, what the symptoms are, how we treat it, and how Mdma seems ideally suited to helping people engage with trauma therapy. So, Ed, great. Oh, next one. Oh, there we go. Okay. So post-traumatic stress disorder, it's a very severe, common, and debilitating mental illness that can affect absolutely anyone that's experienced one or more horrifying or life-threatening events. And these are typically things like interpersonal violence, sexual assault, and in our veteran population, combat trauma. And when you have PTSD, you're really living with the worst thing that's ever happened to you. Images, nightmares, flashbacks come unannounced and unwanted. You feel hypervigilant, you can't relax, and you avoid triggers of anything in the environment. It really affects people's lives and the lives of people around them. There's lots of comorbidity with depression, substance misuse, and unfortunately suicide is increased in people with PTSD. So we treat it with something called trauma-focused psychological therapy, and this is really the gold standard first-line talking treatment. And there's a little bit of evidence that some antidepressants can have a small positive effect. Trauma-focused psychological therapy is effective for over half of people, which is fantastic, but it doesn't work for everyone, and that's because you have to be in the optimal arousal window. Many people can't tolerate it because it's too overwhelming, or they're actually too emotionally underengaged and numbed. And so for this reason, we urgently need new treatments, and it's a moral obligation to our patients to find something that can work for them, that's guided by the best available evidence and in the face of controversy, basically. So at the level of the brain, what's basically happening is you've got a structure called the amygdala, which deals with fear, and this is overactive in PTSD. And when you scan someone's brain and have them relive their trauma or look at angry faces, the amygdala is on fire. You've got another structure in the front of the brain, and this basically controls the amygdala or puts the brakes on, and this is very underactive in PTSD. And when you treat it successfully, this is basically reversed. So if you were going to design a drug that would help someone tolerate therapy, you may want to imagine something that would motivate them whilst also relaxing them, not make them feel drunk or intoxicated, not affect their memory consolidation, do something to the fear circuit, and also help the therapeutic bond with a therapist. So this drug appears to be MDMA. It's been around for a very long time. It was actually first used in therapy before it became an illegal drug. And as we know, now it is a Class A illegal drug that carries very hefty fines and imprisonment if you're caught with it. It's characterized by marked well-being, euphoria. People feel motivated and stimulated, but also relaxed at the same time, getting you into that optimal window of arousal. And it has a profound effect on interpersonal relationships and trust. MDMA seems ideally suited because it has a very unique psychopharmacological profile, which is the drug effect on the brain because of the way it affects different transmitters, brain messengers in different ways, and especially on one called oxytocin, which is the love hormone. This is why people feel loved up when they take MDMA. We know that MDMA robustly increases oxytocin, and in healthy people, oxytocin dampens the amygdala and turns up the prefrontal cortex. This is the landmark study of MDMA-assisted therapy in people with PTSD. On average, they had symptoms for nearly 20 years. And the solid line is those who received 3 doses of MDMA therapy, and you can see it was actually curative in a very small group of people. And the evidence is mounting. There are risks associated with MDMA. Most research has been done on recreational ecstasy, which is not the same thing. But there have been no harms reported, adverse events in clinical studies to date. So the good news is we've had, after a number of years, funding to conduct the very first brain imaging study in patients with chronic treatment-resistant PTSD to find out how it works, and we've been supported by some psychedelic research charities. This is a schematic of the study. We'll enroll 20 people. They'll all receive 2 functional magnetic resonance imaging brain scans looking in real time at what's happening, and they'll all receive MDMA or placebo 2 weeks apart. And when they're in the scanner, which will be for an hour, whilst they're pretty high, we'll have them do a couple of different tasks, basically to relive their trauma, to respond to non-trauma-related emotional things like fearful faces. We'll look at what happens at the brain at a resting state, and then when they come out, we'll see if there's any changes to their cognitive and emotional empathy. And what we hope this will do is lend weight to the argument that this is a therapy that our patients need, and this will pave the way to larger phase 3 treatment studies. Thank you very much.